It is an honor to be here with all of you and with a smart, dedicated group of progressive educators and with the great John Dewey. An hour is not adequate to have a conversation with John Dewey, but we'll do our best to have a full and rich conversation. We want to open it up to questions. I should say from the beginning that I'm not a person who's nostalgic for the past, for a ship that already left the shore. I'm not somebody who looks backward in a way that says, oh, it was so precious and perfect back then and everything's, not as good now. So in this interview, I really want to pay homage to the fact that Dewey was a person, you are a person, who always lived with one foot in the mud and muck of the real world as it was, and another foot striving toward a world that could be. So the notion of contradiction and struggle is a part of Dewey's life, it's a part of Dewey's philosophy, and it really is going to frame the discussion that we have. Maureen mentioned that you were born in 1859, and I think I'd like to start, just to give you a frame of what we're going to talk about, I'd like to start by just noting some of the markers of the life of John Dewey, and then talk a lot about progressive education and hit on some of the themes of your work and your life. But let's just begin. Maureen mentioned you were born in 1859.
1859, before the Civil War.
Exactly, and your father was in the Civil War.
My father was in the Civil War, and we relocated from Vermont down to Virginia so we could be close by. But essentially, I experienced a one-parent family for a while. My father would come back when he was on furlough. But you ask about 1859.
Yes.
A lot of things happened in 1859, which I sometimes think of as symbolic of some of the ideas that I developed. For instance, Darwin published The Origin of the Species in 1859. And later, I wrote a book on the influence of Darwin on philosophy. And John Brown's Raid was 1859. And I was very concerned with social issues that have to do with race and so forth. John Stuart Mill published the Essay on Liberty in 1859. And throughout my career, I've been concerned with liberty. Dickens published The Tale of Two Cities in 1859. And I certainly have been concerned with the issues of rich and poor, and which are played out so well in that. Coming in disguise here, I note that Verdi's Masked Ball appeared in that year too, and the steamroller was invented, and a lot of people have been steamrolled ever since, haven't they?
Mm-hmm. True.
The first oil well. The reason I taught in Oil City, Pennsylvania, as was said in the introduction, is that the first oil rig was in Pennsylvania, in Titusville, Pennsylvania, 1859. There's more.
Well, let's fast forward, because we're going to go through practically the century that you lived. But it certainly was the beginning of a revolution in every sphere, 1859. I mean, you mentioned Darwin and Marx and Freud. All of this happened in the span of your life. You died in. I'm sorry?
And the World Wars.
And the World Wars.
Countless inventions.
You died in 1952. Maybe you'd say a word about that. You remember that? Yeah. And say a word about 1952, and then we'll move from there.
Maybe you can help me. But 1952, I mean, this is when the Korean War began, and the U.S. bombed hydroelectric plants in North Korea. The first H-bomb test occurred in the Pacific under Truman's administration. Some good things happened, too. Albert Schweitzer got the Nobel Prize for Peace, and Steinbeck's East of Eden, a book that I think is a very powerful book, and Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man.
I like the way that you keep up with events, even though
you're long gone.
That's amazing.
I have lots of worlds to look at now. I mean, and this is one of them.